In John 5:26, Jesus declares, "For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself." This is one of the most striking antinomies or paradoxes in the Bible. To our minds, it seems to be a blatant contradiction. How can the Son have life in himself, that is, by nature, if it was granted or given to him? For anyone familiar with our work at Telos Band, it shouldn't come as a surprise that I link this paradox to the communal logic of God, which contrasts with and contradicts the self-relating logic of our fallen rationality. As we know, the Trinity isn't in itself a paradox, and certainly not a contradiction. In fact, nothing in itself is a paradox or antinomy, because an antinomy is merely an apparent contradiction that, once properly grasped, is revealed as reasonable. Antinomies only exist insofar as we perceive them, that is, insofar as our minds have yet to be transfigured by the supra-rational God to perceive the inner rationality and harmony of the world. So I must emphasize that when I speak of the antinomy or paradox of John 5:26, I only mean that it's one of the many examples in the Bible where the logic of God contradicts the logic natural to our fallen minds. Jesus' words reveal the communal nature of life. The Father has life in himself, yet this life is shared eternally with the Son. The life the Father possesses evidently isn't limited in any way. It is, in fact, the life proper to his divine nature. This is precisely why the Jews accuse Jesus of blasphemy in this very scene. Christ's revelation to the Jews and the world is that of communion. Life as such, the very life of the eternal God, is never self-referential or self-enclosed, but is always already shared with the Son and the Spirit. In other words, life is communion. Communion signifies unity in distinction, and John 5:26 brilliantly expresses this. The Father and the Son share a single life, yet the Son is not the Father because he is begotten. The Father is the monarchia of the Godhead who gives his life to the Son, so that the Son derives his personhood from the Father and not the other way around. Thus, we have a unity in distinction wherein the unity is manifested within the proper order of the three distinct persons in their perfect mutual interiority. We must emphasize that while the Father is the monarchia or timeless cause of the Godhead, this doesn't make him superior, nor does it imply that the Father contains the divine nature within his personhood alone prior to its being shared with the Son and the Spirit, not that we can even speak of a prior to in God. While the Son derives his personhood from the Father eternally, the Father could nonetheless not be himself without the Son, which is precisely why he is always already begetting the Son eternally. Analogously, a river source is before the river, yet without the river, one cannot speak of a river source. All three persons are essentially dependent upon each other, yet the Father remains the cause. The divine life only ever is insofar as it exists within or as the communion of the three persons. To quote Father Nikolaos Ludovicos, there is an activated event of complete participation, so that the Son is the only being in whom the Father participates, because if the offspring be not always with the Father, this is a flaw in the perfection of his essence. So the perfection of the paternal essence lies in the fact that it is everlastingly, completely participated. However, one may object that John 5:26 isn't actually a Trinitarian verse, but is referring only to Christ after the incarnation, so that the life the Father gives the Son is given to him during his time on earth. From what I can tell, most modern biblical scholars take this position. On the other hand, the Fathers of the Church universally considered this verse to be Trinitarian. For example, St. Augustine says, quote, "Behold, whoever understands wherein he shows that the Son is equal with the Father, when he says, As the Father has life in himself, so has he given to the Son also to have life in himself, so that there may be only this difference between the Father and the Son, that the Father has life in himself, which none gave him, while the Son has life in himself, which the Father gave. The Father life in himself not from the Son, the Son life in himself but from the Father, begotten of the Father, that he might live in himself, but the Father not begotten, life in himself. Nor did he beget the Son less than himself to become equal by growth. For surely he by whom being perfect the times were created was not assisted by time towards his own perfection." So the problem with the modern interpretation of this verse is that it doesn't actually account for the paradox. If the life the Son has from the Father is truly life he has in himself, then it couldn't be given in time, as St. Augustine says. The life in himself must be the very divine nature of the Son, and that's because it's the same life that the Father, the eternal God, has by nature. Thus, the in itself cannot simply mean something that the Son has within him, the way we have divine life within us through our deification, but something he has by virtue of being the eternal Son. Again, this is precisely why the Jews accused Jesus of blasphemy. Just as the Father, by virtue of being the Father, has life in himself, the Son has the same life by virtue of being eternally begotten. John has already told us that the Word was God and that in him was life all the way back in chapter 1. I'm no biblical scholar, but I think it makes the most sense to identify the eternal life of John 1 with the life of John 5, especially since the life of John 5 is identified with the life of the Father or God himself. And also since essentially the same phrasing, in him in John 1 and in himself in John 5, is used. So in conclusion, God is the fullness of life, yet this life only ever exists as it's shared by the Father to the Son in the Spirit. Life is communion.